Welcome, I'm Brian the Builder, and in today's video I'm going to be continuing the process of getting Moose, my sidekick, ready for posing and I guess maybe some animation. So right now, as the last video just finished up, the Brian the Builder character was in there as a scale or size reference. And after that, I did go in and actually just add a little bit more volume to Moose's face. And just kind of, I don't know, make him feel a little bit more like that cheek has some like mass to it. It was a little sunken. And that's really about it. I have realized that the retop process didn't really do a whole lot of wonders for like nice continuous loops. So the unwrapping process is going to be a bit more of a nuisance, but everything will work out just fine. Moose is cute. I like how his face is a little bit more full now. His head is a little bit taller top to bottom as well. And then I did go in and smooth it out a little bit more. So there was and still is just a little tiny weird crease almost under his eye. And some of that really is just part of the retop process. And once it's unwrapped and textured, like all those little nuances that you might see in the mesh right now, I don't think you'll ever notice again. And if you do, I can still go in and smooth it out a little bit even after it's textured. Because this is not going to be a super fine texture. But again, it's something I'll probably want to do as well as possible so that if I ever need to, I can adjust it in Photoshop. So to begin with, I'm just going to basically assign the Unwrap UVW modifier. And then I'm just going to start cutting seams. So the green ones, and I don't know if you don't do this often, the green ones that are basically what's left over from the original object as far as Max is concerned. And essentially, those are really just the edge of the mesh, because there probably really shouldn't be anything left over from the original mesh. So map seams can really just be turned off. It doesn't really matter. I'll leave peel seams turned on, and those will show up as light blue. And so as I start cutting seams, I'll definitely want to see edged faces. And again, it is nice to be able to just make edge selections of rings of edges and be able to convert those into seams. But it seems like that's just not going to be the way that things are going to work. So point to point allows me to just kind of follow an edge around, and there's a possibility that I'm going to back up a little. If you try to go too far, the point to point seems to want to kind of step around, and it'll get there the shortest way possible. So as I get around here, right, I can see, right, it would have crept up. So I just want to click back and see now it'll run all the way under. So we're just going to run about to the center here, and then run over to the original. All right, so now that'll allow that entire bottom of the foot to be separated into its own material space. So I'll basically now run one up and make sure that that's actually connected. Go run one all the way up kind of the inside of the leg. And that'll end up connecting to a seam. Well, those go all the way to the center of the body for now. Depending on how all this goes, there could just be some seams cut like here to allow everything to kind of flatten out and stretch out. And as I get into the UV editor, I'll be able to cut seams on the fly if I need to, but I'm probably just gonna cut some seams for a while and not talk a whole lot more. So, here we go. One thing that'll make my life a little easier if I actually just select kind of a polygon in this region, and then when I go back, as I arc rotate around or orbit around, it will keep that in the same spot on the screen, so that might help. Okay, that's pretty ridiculous, actually. Seems to definitely be the best version of the relax tool so far. Alright, that's actually going to work really nicely for a simple paint job. Alright, so let's take all of this and actually do that custom pack one more time. Okay, so it's going to normalize, so good. Let's actually go 4096. I don't know why or how that matters, and that hasn't been a setting previously. So I don't know why the map size that's going to end up being on it should make a difference. I'm going to put some of these elements that are literally together, and like that'll make it easier, much easier later if I do end up deciding that I want to make any edits in Photoshop. I'm going to know, which ones are eyes and which ones, is the nose. And that is kind of funny the way it broke that up left and right rather than top and bottom, but doesn't matter. It should just be painted black. And everything else, kind of the space around it, looks like it should be fine. I am not gonna worry anymore about that. Again, it should be a pretty simple paint job, and little man Moose is looking at me right now, so I think it's time to take him outside, which is kind of funny. Alright, so that's the perfect time to stop the video for now, and I will be right back to start working on painting him. So, since I'm not one to stop fiddling even when things don't need to be perfect by any means, and to be able to paint on Moose the way I need, or even want to be able to paint on Moose, his UVs definitely did not need to be as good as I ended up making them. So what I ended up doing, I kind of zoomed in some spots and noticed in a few different places that the UVs were essentially twisted around on themselves. So you may notice from the last video that the UV layout and everything is pretty much completely different. So what I ended up doing is going through piece by piece and selecting the entire element and using quick peel on it. And oftentimes for me, quick peel does a great job, or it does, well, have unexpected results. So, I just kind of got everything laid out the way I wanted first, and then as I went through and used Quick Peel did a great job of essentially untwisting all of the pieces. And all of the little spots, there were little spots like the end of the tail and stuff that had some twists. And again, doesn't really matter because that's gonna just be painted black, so you'd never see any of those things. But as much as anything, I was just kind of experimenting with some of the newer tools that are in the UV Unwrapper or in the Edit UV window inside 3ds Max. So, when the Quick Peel is not new. But some of the other tools in there, like basically that relax, unfold 3D optimize, that's all brand new and works really well, but again, it did have some little twists left, and again, for this still would have been fine, but the quick peel, once the pieces were seamed and laid out, quick peel worked great. So again, just as an update, and I think he looks great if you kind of look around at him. And I have Arnold on the viewport and probably don't need it by any means, but I love this texture pattern, and the checker pattern looks really cool when it's high quality rendered as well. It's kind of fun. And you actually can't really render this texture unless you actually create it as a texture map and apply it. So really the whole big picture as you're doing all of this is you're looking for zero warping or stretching within that pattern. So the more kind of detail and resolution that's in the pattern, the more easily you can see it. Definitely don't need a render like this. But regardless of all of that, his UVs are really, really nicely laid out now. And I do wonder how some of Max's new tools might work, because within the explode settings there is basically flattened by polygon angle, which would break things up in completely different ways. It might actually be a good layout. The benefit of laying it out like this with complete control is that if I do need to go into Photoshop and do any adjustment to it, it should make it pretty easy to do that. And because I did make some adjustments by hand, you can see like these are the two sections of the tail. They're not perfectly scaled to each other anymore. Again, that shouldn't matter a whole lot either. At this point, I've gone through and done a whole bunch of like hand layout adjustment, arrangement of all of these elements. So I kind of like keeping things together where really 3ds Max doesn't care about how it lays things out. But as you select a piece, whatever gets like the blue highlighted edges is attached to it. So those are the two sections of that ear, and again, doesn't really matter. But if I ever have to go into Photoshop and do anything to it, it's just kind of nice to have pieces together that are together. So anyway, all that said, we can actually change this to not be active shade anymore. Let's go high quality anyway, and well, maybe that's a little too heavy on the, well, maybe not. Yeah, let's just go back to standard. It's going to be a lot faster. So I'm going to basically go into now my tools, and we're going to turn on Viewport Canvas. And since he's unwrapped, the Viewport Canvas will allow us to actually create a new material. So we are going to get started on creating the material for Moose. Before I do that though, I need to grab a couple more photos of Moose so I can get a better idea of really what he looks like from the side. I've got some good front face photos of him, but I don't have a good like reference for exactly what's going on. I don't take too many pictures of him from behind, so I don't really have good reference for that. Or his legs, feet. I know one of his feet's pretty much all coffee mocha colored. Again, so I'm going to grab a couple more photos of that, and then I will get painting. Alright, so to begin, in order to kind of give myself a little bit more space here, since I've got all the photos opened up, I'm going to dock the Viewport Canvas over on this side, if I can kind of narrow it in there. There we go. And then I can just kind of move vertically through it and see the different panels that I want. One kind of unfortunate thing with the Viewport Canvas panel here is that when I expand this, it doesn't go 2 panels wide, no matter how many of these sub-panels I have open, which is kind of a nuisance, but in and of itself not that big of a deal. And so I am going to end up using a tablet. I'm probably not really going to do a whole bunch of randomization with that, because it is going to be pretty basic. I may end up using kind of a mask when I paint some of the areas to get a little bit more of a kind of feathered, furry edge. But we'll see. So I think I'm going to end up doing something more like that, so it's not just solid color. But anyway, to start with here, I can either choose what I'm going to like paint on here, or I can just click on the paintbrush. When I click on the paintbrush, do my base color map, it's then going to ask me the same thing that it would ask if I clicked here to click on the base color map, and I'm going to end up getting there. Alright, so if I have a preset size of 2048, that's probably fine. but I think I actually want to go with 4096 to just have a higher quality image to start with. And I'm going to go with a pretty bright white color as most of the base color map to match most of the kind of fur color. So not white, so I can actually paint a little bit of brighter white into some spots. I think, we'll see, but that should be good. So then I'll tell it, let's see, and it'll go into the Moose folder, and we want this to be called Moose Diffuse, or a base color, right? That is really what that is. But I want it to be a PNG, and or, I mean, JPEGs are fine too, but I tend to like pings for most of this kind of stuff. It just is a very good format. All right, so then now that it has the image format type, it should ask, right, if I want, and 24-bit is plenty for this. I don't need an alpha channel, right? I need transparency on this, so I don't need that turned on. It'll keep the file size slightly smaller. And 16.7 million colors is definitely plenty for the 3 or 4 main colors really of Moose here. So, okay. Then that will be good. It'll generate our map, and I'll see I have layers that I can work on here, kind of similar to Photoshop. So on top of this background layer, it's usually a good idea to work in layers. Not a bad idea by any means, typically. So now with my layer 1 here going, and I think this can even save a PSD at some point. If we've got this, we can, I think, export a PSD. Regardless, I shouldn't really need to, but if I feel like it, I can even keep all the separate colors on their own layers. But again, that probably won't really matter, right? And I can turn the layers on and off here if I need to see them again. But okay, so let's get going. My paint color, I generally do not want to be absolutely pure black. We're gonna go with just a really dark gray. And that'll allow me to actually have lighting that causes shadows and highlights, right? So again, I don't necessarily want this pure black, but I want it really dark. All right, so all that said, I'm gonna grab the tablets, and let's see, that I will also turn on mirroring. Let's see. Didn't want to do that. So I just want it as I see. Okay, so that's not, okay, nope, that's not the right one. Y, there we go, the Y-axis is correct. I can see it touched together on the center of his nose. All right, but I also want to, again, as I make the brush bigger and smaller, well, for this, let's actually use a mask. So I'm going to use, I think that's the scratchy one. And if I turn on follow stroke as I paint, and this is probably going to get erased here, right? It'll kind of follow around. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. But all of that should allow me to get a little bit more natural edge. I don't know for sure. Do brackets change size here like they do in Photoshop? No. Brackets here zoom in and out of your viewport. All right, so I'm sure there's a keyboard shortcut for this. I don't know it offhand. So, all right. Now, why? Could have swore I added a layer there. Alright, well, it must have been when I kind of left the Viewport Canvas. Alright, so No big deal. All right, so now that I have a layer and I'm kind of set up, I'm going to probably turn the mask off for now to block in most of the large color area. And then I will go back and work on the edge and probably maybe just kind of go back in and just work the edge along at the same time that I work in all that mocha color. But yeah, so let's get to it. Alright, so my tablet is not set up for 3ds Max as soon as it goes anywhere near it's orbiting my viewport. So rather than take the time to figure all that out, I'm just not going to worry about it, and I'm going to paint with the mouse. So, alright. Well, alright. I don't think, going to bother painting the pads on the bottom of the feet. It just doesn't seem necessary. I don't think I'm ever going to see them. So I think he's done. I'm gonna have to go in and actually just make sure that the eyes are shinier than the rest. But other than that, I think he's super cute. So I think he's good to go. Let's actually close this and we'll save his PSD and replace texture. Then, yeah, I don't want to flatten. Yeah, that's the right one. So we'll replace that. Now, we should be able to turn that off in the material editor. Yep, okay. It did bring that in, but for whatever reason, this is not being told to show in the viewport. So that is the layered PSD that was saved that we can still edit in Photoshop if we need to. And as it's applied to Moose, let's do a render. Hopefully it's pretty quick. I think that looks great. I'd say it's obviously based on Moose, right? My colors are a little bit, I think, deeper in the mocha tones, but I want to make sure they stand out. I do think going in and kind of toning down some of the texture in the face might be a good idea. But I think he's probably going to be, let's close these, viewed more distant, right? I think than what he is right there. So if we pull that back, and then assuming most of the time he's also going to be in the shot with the Bride the Builder character, probably gonna be more this kind of distance angle, not sure, but yeah, I think at that view, at that distance, having a little bit of that texture in his face, I think looks really good. I like the variety of the texture in the tans. You don't really see a whole lot in the dark gray, but I think overall he looks really good. I'm probably just gonna leave him right where he is, and then I think call this one done. In the next video, we'll be rigging him so that he can be posed, and a rig for him ought to be pretty simple. He definitely doesn't need to be I guess, well, I'll probably make sure he's able to be posed in pretty much any position we want, but I'm not going to need to do a whole bunch of elaborate animation. So the rig will be made to make sure he can be posed and not necessarily highly animated. All right, so thanks for watching. I appreciate that you guys are checking all this stuff out. So please hit the like button, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. And thanks for watching.